Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Christelle Rinn and I'm the COO here at HRLocker. Today we're delighted to have Aaron McKenna with us, who is the CEO of the UCD Professional Academy with us. So welcome, Aaron. Lovely to have you with us this morning, and thanks for taking the time. So what we're going to be going through this morning is going through, I suppose, the importance of upskilling and learning and development for your employees, why it's so important specifically during kind of this time of change, and why it's important that we're focusing on investing in, I suppose, our employees' upskilling. As always, we have a questions and answers section within the platform. So at any time, if anybody has a question specifically for Aaron or myself, I don't mind, I can take a question as well, but specifically for Aaron while he's here, pop it into the questions and answers section. And we'll try to get to all the questions, and any that we don't get to, we'll fire up to Aaron and we can come back to people individually. But please feel free to answer as many questions, to ask as many questions as you have while we have Aaron with us today. So Aaron, no pressure, over to you.
Thank you very much. And thank you so much for having me, and thank you for coming along, folks. So I was saying at the top of the call that the nice man from UCD is going to talk to you now about why you should be upskilling people in your organization. But hopefully what we can do in today's presentation is give you a practical view of actually the challenges that organizations and their employees face when they try to do upskilling, because we have tens of thousands of students, over 1,000 corporate clients, about 40 odd products that we sell, and we have a fair idea of the types of barriers to getting people engaged in productive upskilling. And hopefully by the end of this, rather than just saying, well, the man from UCD said you should be upskilling people, you'll have a fairer idea about how to go about doing it or dealing with some of the challenges that might come up. So I guess we discuss first the global workforce skills challenge, right? So no surprise, I'm sure, to anybody who's here that there's a very significant challenge. Lots of digital technologies transforming people's work. I was once a digital marketeer. If I tried to sit down and be a digital marketeer today, after 10 plus years of not being in it, I wouldn't be capable of doing the job, right? We obviously have AI and GPT and all that stuff is very big in the zeitgeist at the moment. It's clear that this is going to change how people work. And there's a significant opportunity for that, both for individuals and companies, but also there's a risk, right, to not keeping up with upskilling. I think that organizations have a real vested interest. We'll see on the next slide, a lot of people are really bought into the idea that finding the right skills is a threat to people's business, be that finding new talent to bring into the business, retaining existing talent and keeping them sharp. And of course, for individuals, it's really critical for them in their career that they're seeing progression, they're seeing upskilling, they're seeing their employers invest in them so that they feel like this is a place I want to stay, so that when I'm building up all that knowledge capital that comes with time spent in a business or an organization, that I'm not just going to leave and go to the next place because that's where I think the next hill is there to be conquered for me. So it's kind of a two-way process, I suppose. When we look at we've done a bunch of market research, both externally in Ireland and internally when we talk to our own customers, our own students, and the people who acquire with us don't buy from us, annoyingly. We'll see on the next slide that the vast majority of individuals, when they decide to take on a course of study, do so for career advancement, right? Now that sounds really simple when you say it, but I guess it's the contract, right? So about a third of the individuals who would come to us are being sponsored by their employer, and about half of everyone who studies with us is being sponsored by their employer in one way, shape, or form, and they are giving up their time. Most people, for example, with us would study part-time in the evening. They'd log on like 6:30 at night. They're putting a significant investment into to interrupt their lives almost to do upskilling. And I think that the reason that they're doing it is for career advancement. The reason you might be investing in them as an individual is probably, well, you know, I need my digital marketing team to be really up on the latest technologies. I need better data analytics run through my organization. I need to be able to figure out what AI means. Mary's become a project manager and I need her to get better skills there to drive my business. If I'm Mary, it's about career advancement. It's about you investing in me so that I can advance in my career and continue my career story, whether that's with your organization or just in general. And I think it is important that when organizations want an L&D strategy that works, getting the buy-in of employees is really vital, and linking upskilling to career advancement goals, I think, is basically, by far and away, it's the best method that we can sit there and we can try and scare them, tell them AI is coming for your job or something like that. It's not, it'll change it. But you know, we can do that, but actually, or hey, we want to hit better goals in the next quarter. Actually, it's what does it mean for me in terms of my career advancement. For organizations themselves, as I say, it's really you're trying to upskill and reskill your existing workforce. The pace of change, the pace of technological change in people's roles, as well as just people naturally advancing in your organization and you needing to upskill them, is really vital. And again, lots of external data, you know, kind of Deloitte and Gartner can eat out for days on data that says everybody needs to be keeping up with the changes that are occurring. And I think that for you in your organization, also being explicit, so saying, okay, we're going to invest in you for your career advancement, but on the other side, we're trying to remain competitive as an organization, because otherwise someone else is going to eat our lunch, or we're not going to achieve our goals because we're not keeping up with the pace of change that's going on in the world. And when we talk to our own corporate client, it's exactly the same. They engage in employee upskilling to right-size skills for changing business priorities. So if you can marry those two things, career advancement and what it is you're trying to do as an organization. And even we find there are organizations that sit down with individuals. They you know, not all investment in L&D is, you know, we're doing a big digital transformation and we're going to get 100 people going through this particular program. A lot of it is somebody's doing their PDR, they're doing their regular sort of performance cycle. In that conversation, they're having a frank conversation with their manager about where they want to be going in their careers, and the manager is contextualizing where the business needs to go. And when those two things meet, you get really engaged employees who will engage in upskilling and bring those skills into the organization, and critically stay in the organization, which is also most beneficial, obviously. And yeah, again, lots of CEOs, PwC eating out on this one, who introduce upskilling programs see you know, increased productivity, talent acquisition and retention, and obviously a more resilient workforce. So so I'm hoping that that's just the preamble, and now I can get into more of the real stuff. That's it. How do you make this happen, right? So so this is from our own data, right? So we've produced a market report which you guys can all read in detail, but we go out to, as I say, the whole population, not everyone in Ireland, but a representative sample of people in Ireland, and then obviously we've got a lot of our own data. So we'd have 23,000 students who've studied with us. We've another 100,000 people who've considered studying with us, and about 1,000 corporate clients. So we've got a really good pool of data. So when we sit down with individuals and we ask them, you know, why don't they engage in upskilling? 59% of people, surprise, say that cost is the biggest barrier to taking a course. And so if you can find some way to sponsor them, co-sponsor them, maybe get involved with the different, I mean, there's a ton of great funding initiatives out there. You've got skill nets and so on, and we find we work with a lot of organizations who are very clever at networking into their skill nets and working with them to access funding that's available to the likes of the National Training Fund, even getting people onto programs and things like Springboard and so on. Like there's a lot of different ways that you can access funding. If you come to us as an organization and you look to buy multiple seats, we'll give you a steep discount. There you go. There's my one plug. But anyway, there's lots of ways to bring down the cost and defray the cost. And actually, again, use it as a retention point for staff. You say, well, we're going to spend €1,000 or more on putting you through some training. So, you know, if you leave within a year, you pay us back, or you know, there's stuff like that. That's again giving the win-win, but also a bit of carrot and stick. We find that about a fifth of people find taking a course to be inconvenient. So it's inconvenient for their time. And so when we ask people why they consider purchasing but don't, there's two things. I didn't have the time, or I didn't have the money. Those are the two major barriers to people taking a course. We ask people who do take a course with us why they're taking a course with us. They'll often say, the course length fit my need. That's all the time that suits me, right? So when we launched the UCD Professional Academy, we're really particular, for example, about doing courses at times that suit people and in ways that suit them. So, we started out purely in the classroom right before the pandemic, so we became an online operator pretty fast. But since returning, kind of post-COVID, if I could say that, we now find that only 12% of people in Ireland would say that classroom only course is their preferred method of study. So we've got a great campus here in Belfield. We're really keen to get lots of people into it. But actually, 90% of the people who study with the Professional Academy are studying online. Vast majority of them are studying part-time in the evening. A course might be like 3 hours over 12 weeks in the one evening a week, for example, so it's digestible. And we then have maybe corporates sending us people during the working day when they're prepared to give them time during the working day in a closed group type setting. But it's really important for people. It's can I afford this, and then can I find the time for it? Because when I go home, I got to feed the kids, I got to do whatever I got to do, or maybe I'm really busy at work. And so again, if you're kind of sitting there and thinking, gosh, I love upskilling, it's great, but how do I get people to engage in it in a more serious way? I think that addressing that, okay, the money is relatively straightforward, but the time piece is really, really critical to people. And I think that again, if you're able to have really practical conversations with them about that, and then you find providers who are quite good at thinking about that, and we're not like, it'll be on every Tuesday morning when there's a full moon, and it'll be on a Friday afternoon when it's a waning moon, and you gotta make that practical. Yeah. But the good thing is, see on the next slide, that once you get people into some form of upskilling, they're far more likely to consider taking courses again. So the example we use here, so about 5% of our students have actually come back and taken a second or further course with us. They're already happy with the course, and then they come back in and have another go. But actually the courses we offer are quite, they're kind of like, I call it 36 hours of tuition, right? They're really short, sharp, let's get some skills and let's get going. But we have a huge amount of people who come to us and dip their toe in, and then they're going on to further postgraduate studies. So one of our most popular programs is in project management. And then we, obviously at UCD, we've got a great master's in project management. It's offered part-time and so on. And we saw about 40% of the people who started our master's in project management at UCD in last September had engaged with the Professional Academy. So they come in, they've taken some short form of studies, and okay, this is cool, this is interesting, and then they've gone on to further study. For some people that won't be appropriate, right? For lots of people it's one and done. Let's do a course, or maybe do a series of courses over a period of time. But for some people, they kind of get the bug and they say, okay, well, I want to go into a master's now, or I want to take further short courses. And those employees tend to be really engaged individuals who are really investing in themselves, because they're investing in the time, even if they're being sponsored by their employer. And they tend to be the people who, you'll see going up the ladder, or you'll see them looking for promotions, you'll see them picking up projects and so on and so forth. In our experience, they tend to be the people who push on. Mm-hmm. So I guess to circle around for landing, best practice and key consideration from our side of things, there's table stakes. Okay, sit down and understand the learning needs of individuals, or your site, or your company. Understand, okay, well, we got to figure out how AI is going to impact us. How are we going to do a bit of training around that, or what's our strategy? We have people who are, developing as leaders in the organization. How are we managing that? So identifying your needs, of course, is really important. But where we've really grown as quickly as we've grown over the last three and a half years, we feel has been because we're looking with corporate clients and saying, let's make this convenient, let's make it relevant, and let's get rid of those barriers that stop people from engaging in training. And I think that is just something that potentially gets overlooked a little bit, right, within organizations, and indeed as training organizations, we find that we can be guilty of not always being responsive. So we sit down, as I say, you can read our market research report. You can sit there. We've got data on how people like to study part-time online, full-time online, a blend of online and classroom. What times they like to study at. Is it in the evening, or in the morning, or in the afternoon? At weekends, that's the least popular. Don't make anyone do training on Saturday. But genuinely, these are the really practical things that stand in the way of your workforce and actually getting that L&D strategy over the line and getting them engaged in upskilling so that they get all that goodness into your organization and into your careers. And hopefully I've said all that so fast that you can
yes, for any questions,
and ask me 90 questions.
Please do. And I would just like to say, from our own side of things, we've had a number of people go on the training specifically last year, and it was interesting to see that 1 in 5 find it inconvenient. And I know last year, well, I had done one in the evening time that was, I think, from like 6 to 9 o'clock or something like that. And you know, I've got kids at home. It was inconvenient for me and irritating. However, I think I put somebody else on it this year, and you've actually changed that it's in the afternoon as well. So it's nice to see that kind of, you know, it's not all a one fits all kind of.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I suppose as an operating model, it's complicated, right? Like our scheduling is like our bad Rubik's Cube. We use great subject matter experts who are really expert in the field, long time working in the field. They aren't 10 a penny, and so you're trying to fit that in, because most people want live delivery. We do have some on-demand courses in our most popular areas where people come along, they study in their own time, and about a third of people probably would prefer, again in the Irish market, about a third of people want on-demand online, a third of people want online live, and a third of people want some mediation or mix in between, right? Sorry, live, will it be in the classroom or not? And so we put a lot of effort into trying to offer courses up in a way that suits people. So yeah, you can come along, you can take a course during business hours. We find a lot of people responsive by their employers are taking that option, whereas people who are paying for themselves tend to do it in the evening. There are lots of people who find it convenient to take it, because even if your employer says to you, look, you can take 3 hours out during the working day, there's a lot of people who are like, I got to suffer with work afterwards, so I'll try and make the time. But again, you've got to also think, if they're doing assignments and so on, will you give them a bit of time for that? Will you give them a bit of time back for it? Because that's we're like diet and exercise, and as somebody who doesn't diet and doesn't exercise, I would have to say that I then come along and I'm like, everybody do upskilling because it's really important. But it's easy to put off, right? It's one of these things. It's fairly easy for people to say, I'll leave that till next year. I'll leave that a little bit. But actually, for them as individuals, their skills are atrophying. For you as an organization, there's some, like, if let's say you're an exporter, right, and you're exporting into Europe, there's some clever clogs in Amsterdam who's really into his tech, and their company are really progressive, and they're just going to beat you. Or so it could be some organization just down the road. They're going to beat you because they're just getting better at using technology, adapting to how things are working in the world, and so on and so forth. And so if you're an organization where you don't have a culture of people, taking courses is one way to upskill. There are other ways to upskill, right? There's lots of people who learn themselves, and so on and so forth. But if you don't have that culture in one way, shape, or form, you're going to be less competitive, and it's going to cause your business trouble down the line. So it pays to figure this bit out and get it right.
And what do you think, Aaron, just in regards to your own opinion, is I did a master's a couple of years ago in person, and to be honest with you, I found the best thing from that was actually meeting people, getting the 2 days a month actually physically on campus to actually meet people, and to I suppose make myself take the days out. Subsequently, I have done, and look, we are a fully remote company now, so we're all about remote working and staying at home, staying out of the office. I have done training since then that has been remote, and yes, I've done it. I think definitely the better experience was being in person. But do you think we'll ever get back to that, or is it just remote going forward?
Yeah, so it depends, right? So UCD is some of the most expensive real estate in Dublin 4, and we have it for a reason, right? So there's a strong reason to engage in in-person education, and some of the courses again that we offer are available on campus. Back to that Rubik's Cube. What we find is that, so first of all, we go to great lengths to make sure that our online education has strong opportunities for that serendipitous connection. Because I would agree with you, a significant amount of the value you get from taking a course is engaging with other people, other working professionals, and so on. So you take a course with us, there's going to be breakout rooms, going to be sessions, you're going to be interacting with people. And I've read some really powerful testimonials from students who've said that actually that is like, you know, great, thanks to the course. That's a huge amount of the benefit that I've gotten out of it. You're absolutely right. There are courses and things you can do that are best done in person. So, for example, we have Smurfit Executive Development, right? So, if you want to take a pretty relatively short upskilling course, come to the UCD Professional Academy. You want your executives to go on, let's say, a course on, you know, managing high performing teams, or you really want to get into something that's really meaty and you know, it's expensive, but it's really worthwhile for the right people in your organization. Most of those are done in person for exactly that reason, because that's you just the benefit of being in person is so significant. Again, on the other hand, our fastest growing MBA is effectively a modular one that's very significantly delivered online, right? So there's an element of
convenience.
What is, yeah, it's what suits you and what's convenient, and you know, where are you what's your personal learning style, and I guess what can you fit in, and so we're trying to be as many things to as many people as possible. So you have the option. Again, we've a lot of corporates who come to us and say, look, I want 20 people to do effective business presentation skills. I want the examples to be relevant to our industry, and I want you to do it on site over a day or two, right? And it's because it's a team, it's in scenario. That adds a lot of value, right? Us taking the time to slightly customize the content to what they're doing and so on really does add a lot of value. At the same time, if you've got 2 or 3 people you want them to do it, they don't have a huge amount of time in their hands. You know, the online course will get you most of the way there, I suppose.
Yeah. So I have a couple of questions here, Aaron, that I'm just going to fly through. Is, I mean, you've kind of alluded to this or answered this somewhat already. Is, so in terms of funding, it's always the first question. How do you get funding to do a UCD course?
How do you get the money? So there's a couple of ways. So the first thing I would say is, if you are an organization, look into the government funding that is available. There's a whole world of government funding. Some of which comes to us, some of which doesn't. But one that I would call out is SkillNets, because it's very much driven by organizations. So member organizations, which is organizations, companies, and so on, become members of a SkillNet, and that SkillNet can draw down funding from the likes of the National Training Fund and help subsidize programs. And they're not just for really big organizations, they're for all types of organizations. But in truth, what I find is a lot of our clients who are bigger, who have, you know, kind of more resources, are more tapped in, and therefore are making better use of that funding. But I do think that organizations should be proactively looking for SkillNets in their region, in their industry, and so on, and trying to engage with them. That's point number one, and a big old plug for SkillNets. We then offer straight discounts. So if you were to come to us as an organization and you're looking to put multiple people through courses, we will take you on at a discount. We have a lot of organizations where individuals were kind of coming in one by one, and we went back to them and said, well, you sponsor Barry and Joe and Jack, let's talk about your L&D strategy, and then let's do you a deal. And we're very keen to do that. We're particularly keen, again, to do that with organizations around the country, a lot of SMEs and so on, because again, it's easy for, you know, a large FDI company or a large domestic company to come in and buy hundreds of seats off us, and they do. But actually, we really like engaging with SMEs, put our green jersey on, so to speak, and make sure that you guys can access funding that way, or rather, at least good discounts. And then I suppose the other piece I would say is that if you have an L&D strategy and you're building a business case, because the other place you get funding is from your own CFO, and I think it's really important that you're able to bring back a use case. So it's not just that we'd like to put a few people through courses, but actually, if you come to us and you say, look, we need to develop our thinking. So here's our problem, and we're looking to develop our thinking. Now we've got 40 odd courses. If our courses aren't right for you, I'll send you to my colleagues in Smurfit Executive Development. We have lots of masters and stuff we can do. And I've already mentioned things like Springboard and so on. We're genuinely, let's get you to the right place, right? For the people you have working in your organization. But you kind of want to have that idea of what are we actually trying to achieve as an organization here? Not just people are doing PDRs and they'd like to do courses. It's part of our employee benefit thing. You know, that's CFOs can cut that pretty quick. But actually link it back to what you're trying to achieve as an organization. We're happy to have that. In fact, we love having that conversation, because when somebody comes to us and says, this is the problem we're trying to solve, we're probably naturally going to suggest that one or two of the solutions might be to buy courses from us, but actually, genuinely, we have a more holistic view and might be able to help point you in the right direction.
And I think that's the key, isn't it, when you're looking at doing your L&D plan, that it's not like, okay, we're just going to train 10% across the board. It's like, well, why are we doing that? What's the point? Yeah.
Exactly.
So, okay, this kind of leads nicely into this is, we're all about the budgets. With budgets in some organizations changing or reducing due to the current economy. And I think you'll agree with me, is most of the time it's the first thing to be cut is your training budget. Do you have any advice on how organizations can make better bets on the training they provide their teams to get the most out of it? So reduce budget, how do you still continue training?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing I would say to any organization that's kind of thinking about its budgets and its let's say its total approach. Forget about L&D. L&D is one part of your total approach. What's our total approach to the future, right? So if I mentioned AI earlier, right? And the second hearing me talk about it in my organization, because I'm saying I want a strategy about how we're incorporating this into our business and how we're teaching people about
I'm all there for the ChatGPT course.
I'm man, it is just it, but genuinely, it's not even the ChatGPT course. It's, you know, if we're in our digital marketing course, or we're in our business presentation skills course, right? You know, there's AI generators now that'll help you build presentations. Yeah. Some of them are great, some of them are crap, but you have to understand it, right? Or if you're spending budget elsewhere, let's say you're spending a lot of budget on content production, for example, arguably this stuff might be, if you know about it, a way to save a bit of money. So I would look at that sort of thing and say, well, if we don't adapt to this stuff, what's the cost going to be to our business? Does our business have a strategy towards this or not? If we're a business or an organization that has to do a lot of marketing, if we don't keep current on what's changing in that space, or we just rely on our staff to just do it themselves, we're kind of in the lap of the gods then, aren't we, as an organization? So I always draw it back to what's the business or the organization trying to achieve, and what are the skills gaps that are there? You could be an organization that's going to say, okay, well, you know what, we've been going through a big hiring glut. We're not going to hire any more people, but obviously we need to progress people within the roles. And actually, to be honest, it's cheaper to progress people than to hire in new outside talent. And so, are we developing these people with the right skills? You know, if they're going to become managers, or they're going to, you know, so I would focus it always inward to the business goal. I wouldn't sit there and say we should preserve the L&D budget, because I would sit there and say, what are we trying to achieve as an organization? What are the external threats to this organization? What's the cost of not working on that? So, okay, we're going to promote more people from within. We're not going to give them any training. We'll just put them in place, and the lawsuits will roll in. You know, so maybe we should send them on an HR course or a leadership course or something like that, right? So I think that you contextualize always back to business goals and objectives. Again, for us, like I'm looking at how technology is mediating and changing a whole bunch of areas of our business. And the conversation starts at, how are we going to adapt to this? What's the potential impact on the business? And then what do we need? We need to train people on a bit of that, or we need to do a bit of this. That's the bit that flows out the end of it, type of thing. Yeah.
And I think as well, Aaron, you know, sometimes the L&D budget, that's kind of a bugbear of mine. I'll do my rant for 5 minutes. There is mandatory training that people have to do, and that obviously has to come out of a budget. But when I think of L&D, we're talking about the actual development side of things. So how it's not just mandatory training, it's how you're looking at succession planning or feature planning or that kind of thing. It isn't just because you're doing mandatory training doesn't mean you've ticked the entire box for learning and development planning.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a really special time in human history, right? If I go really meta, but genuinely, we're going through technological revolutions in the last decades, and I'm sure by the looks of it, it will continue in the decades ahead. The way that we work and the way that things work is changing rapidly and considerably, and if you don't keep up with it, you know, you're. It's kind of like travel agents right before the internet arrived, right? Now there's still travel agents today, but there isn't as much as there used to be, right? And you don't want to get caught out that way. You don't want to be like the CEO of Blockbuster, who in 2008 said Netflix isn't even on our competitive radar, and they went bankrupt in 2010. So you know, you really want to contextualize your strategy. You're right. There's things you have to do in your business, right? So and you know, you're not going to stop those in favor of this stuff, but genuinely, I think that no matter what your organization is, you could be a charity, you could be a public sector body, you could be a business. If you're not keeping up with the pace of change that is occurring out there, somebody else is going to eat your lunch, or you're going to be totally surpassed and blindsided by something that's going on. The only way to keep up is to keep people learning, keep them fresh, send them to conferences, send them to courses, have them take time out to actually think about the direction of travel in the business, and then try and upskill people and keep people current. And the other side is, if you're not keeping people current, either their performance will wane and you'll march them out that way, or you'll want to march them out, or you'll have to hire in the talent. You will hire in the talent from somewhere else where people have been upskilling themselves or being upskilled by their employer, and you're going to have to go in, you're going to have to buy in that talent. And the cost of that, it's often a hidden cost, but you know, we go back to that whole thing of, if people leave because you're not investing in them, it's a cost to replacing them. If people stay and you're not upskilling them, there's a cost to keeping them. And if you have to replace them later with those skills, I mean, it's a huge cost. There's a recruitment cost, there's an integration cost, and then there's a salary at the end of it. So I think that's,
and it's cultural cost as well. I think if you just don't have that focus on promoting from within or succession, things like that, I think there's an expense in your own culture.
Absolutely, and it's I know I'm probably preaching to the converted here, but it's easy to say, difficult to do, right? You have to have a strategy, and then you have to sit down and do your PDRs and bring people along and so on. And it's time consuming, but it's genuinely like the people who work for us nowadays, they leave after like 2 years. They don't leave after a year. They go to the next thing, they bounce to the next thing. And very often when you sit down, you do an exit interview with them, it's basically, well, I didn't feel like I was progressing enough, so I went on. And you know, we're in a weird economic cycle at the moment where banks are collapsing, interest rates are high, but the employment market is tight. I can't wrap my head around this one, but we're in a tight employment market, and still, and I think that retention is even more critical, because actually now there's a risk somebody leaves and your CFO says, well, you're not allowed to replace them. So again, there's a bit of that goes on as well. So yeah, probably preaching to convert it, but I understand how difficult it is, and that's one of the reasons why we try to be, because we just sit and think about this all day long. So we try to be a partner. So if somebody comes along to us, okay, you come along and say, I'd like to buy 10 seats, great. But if you come along and say, look, this is my challenge, we try and at least point you in the right direction, if not actually assist you in meeting that challenge. It's beneficial to us because more people engage in upskilling, great. But actually, we think that when we sit down with Enterprise Ireland, when we sit down with the IDA and so on, you know, they're just dancing up and down saying we need organizations to continue to invest here so that Ireland Inc. remains competitive, and we're big believers in that.
There's an interesting question here with two-part question. So I work in HR in the construction sector. What professions in general need upskilling, for example? In light of all the changes taking place in the world and with AI, etc., how does a company know what to upskill? Following on to explain this, I read in the Sunday Independent that robots are being introduced into the hospitality industry, for example. How do I keep up?
Here's a really interesting thing about well, there's pre-AI and post-AI, and AI is a little bit speculative because we don't know where that's going to ultimately end up. It's impressive so far, but we have to see where it'll end up. But even if you forget that ChatGPT happened, right? pretty much every role in the universe has been changed in some way, shape, or form by technology. The interesting thing about AI is, for the first time, in a mass way, people in white collar jobs, working professionals, are looking at saying, oh my God, my job is actually potentially a threat here. And that's a shift, right? Because up till now, I mean, I was working in an e-commerce company 15 years ago or more, and they had just introduced a roboticized warehouse where you no longer needed pickers going through the warehouse. And, I'm sure we've all sat there, kind of watching the news and, oh, that's interesting. And we'll have to think about how we reskill these people and so on. Kind of like how, oh, they're shutting down the coal mines now. This time it's arrived and, this thing can do due diligence on contracts. That's fascinating. Or, how much audit work can this thing do? How much time goes into selecting samples and pouring over them in audit? I was involved in a thing recently, and there was a transaction involving a business that I'd previously been involved in, and we were training solicitors doing the 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift, and you were able to talk to them at 11, talk to them at 5 in the morning, and a lot of the work that they were doing potentially doesn't need to be done. That doesn't mean we're getting rid of solicitors, doesn't mean we're getting rid of HR departments, but it does mean that our work is going to change considerably. I would argue that is just an acceleration of an existing trend, right? So if you're working in HR, for example, you see fantastic tools, HRLocker being one, coming along, but genuinely fantastic organization, bringing technology along and helping to mediate and improve what you're doing as an organization. You sit back from that and you say, well, in order to work that, I probably need some understanding of how a computer works. We just take that for granted. Probably need to get some understanding how technologies could talk to one another and so on and so forth. So you're working in HR and suddenly you're thinking about tech stack, right? And if you're not thinking about it, it's probably because well, you should be, because if you want to be the HR director, if you want to be leading a progressive organization, you want to be thinking about that. So I think that everyone needs upskilling in some way, shape, or form. There's lots of professions where, again, if I just lean back on marketing as one that I happen to know really, really well as a former subject matter expert, but now not one, I would say, it's a really clear area where, like, tools have been rolled out, every year that are changing how things work, and you need to be keeping your edge up one way or another to keep going. If you're in let's say you're in one of the regulated professions, so let's say you're in accountancy or law or something like that, there's a fair chance that the regulations aren't going to change so fast that technology completely upend you. But at the same time, you exist in a globally competitive world. So if the UK says we can now use AI tools in audit and we don't catch up to that, we'll start losing business. There's companies might place themselves elsewhere because their cost of business will go down or something like that. So there's a bit of that. So I would argue that you would want to be keeping an eye on the developments and then kind of upskill in like there's a lot of talk now of prompt engineering being a skill that we're all going to have to learn if we're going to be using these tools. So how do you know what to upskill in? I think this is where you sit back as an organization and you say, well, what are we trying to do, right? So if we're we're an education company, right? So we sell education and training. And so we're sitting back right now and we're saying, okay, well, we do a lot of marketing, and to be fair, we do a lot of admissions work. So, Intercom, for example, are one of the early adopters of using ChatGPT to look at customer service queries. So look at your knowledge base, look at every ticket you've ever answered, and maybe you now have an AI bot that's answering a load of tickets. You probably want a human mediating some of that, but you're not far away from now plugins that'll enable it to maybe order a replacement unit for a customer who needs it. So you want to understand that. You want to probably understand how that's working. And then you probably want to, as an organization, look and say, well, what's our strategy there? And in order for us to have a strategy, we need people who are spending time, maybe they're going to AI conferences, maybe they're spending time looking at these products, maybe they're taking a course, maybe obviously we think developing a course or modules for courses that introduce this. So now we've got to be doing this in a couple of different areas because we think this is going to change our strategy or change how we approach our business and so on. So always, it's not how do I adapt to this technology? It's what's my business problem or what's my organizational issue, and what is out there that's likely to be changing that in the future, and therefore should send people to upskill in this in one way, shape, or form. Yeah. Apart from that, there is the evergreen stuff, right? So I doubt. Well, this is famous last words, but I doubt they're going to bring on CEO GPT anytime soon. I'll be before I'll be out of a job in a week. But genuinely, like so you're in HR. Huge amount of your work is process driven, but actually a very significant amount is driven by helping people to kind of deal with change, helping people to move on, helping people to move up, dealing with crises when they emerge and so on.
Yeah,
and while you might have an AI bot in the background that's maybe highlighting this is the policy and this might be helpful here, you're the one who's going to sit in the room with the person and ultimately. So those soft skills, continue to develop soft skills among leaders and so on, I think is really important and isn't going to go away. Yeah. So I'm not sure if that was a meandering answer. I hope it was somewhat
No, but I think that's the key, is that it has to be aligned to what your business goal is, right? And also yes, it's going to, AI for sure is going to maybe change a lot of jobs and maybe replace them, but it's not going to completely, get rid of 90% of the workforce.
If I read the literature from the 80s and 70s, PCs were supposed to have me working a 4-hour work week by now. So
we're waiting there.
No, still waiting.
So one of the questions here is, would you recommend online training tools such as Coursera, putting aside your UCD affiliate?
Yeah. So different strokes for different folks, right? So if you take Coursera, you take LinkedIn Learning and so on, these are fantastic platforms with some fantastic learning, which I use myself. Mm-hmm. A lot of organizations buy the license, give a login to everybody, and then nobody uses it. And I guess that's a challenge. That's one challenge, right? So you can kind of be ticking a box, and that's why these, like the likes of LinkedIn Learning and so on, will put a lot of effort into onboarding you and getting people using the tech. Shorter courses, like those are super short, right? So our courses are short, like 36 hours of tuition. It's nothing like taking a master's or postgrad diploma, right? But they're meaty enough, right? So again, it's what are you trying to do? Like I'll tell you a secret. Nothing we teach you can't learn on YouTube and just doing things and reading a few books. Anyway, there's nothing you can learn. What drives the learning is the learning environment. No, not genuine. Like lots of people teach themselves lots of things, and that's fine. What you kind of get if you come along to one of those paths is you're getting more mediated learning, more thought put into building the course and so on, but it's kind of sitting there. So then maybe you want to go to someone like ourselves at a time when, one, you want something that's a little bit meatier. You kind of want to be led along by the head, i.e. you want to, okay, I got to go somewhere at a certain time, or I got to complete this with a certain period of time. And then there's the credential that comes at the end, which is also reasonably important. So you can accrue like badges from Coursera and so on. You get yourself a professional academy diploma. It's different again, and then you go and you get a postgrad diploma at level 9 from UCD, or that's another thing again, right? And so the value of the credential, so it's the value of the learning, it's the type of learning that people are actually going to engage in. That's the value of the credential that they want or need at the end of it. So by no means would I tell you not to look at things like that, but I would say question what you're trying to accomplish. And what's your metric of success, I suppose? And if it's you tick the box, great. But do take a look at it from that perspective. Is this meaty enough?
I think as well, just from our own side, is it's also like we try to instill a culture of learning, continuous learning for people, and that it's not just going on courses. We do that too, and that's really important. But also specifically in marketing, like I said, things change so fast. We could have done a marketing course with you guys last year, and now there's a whole new Google algorithm coming out or whatever. So those kind of quick little bite-sized courses are really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going down the line. Yeah. So I'm just conscious of time here. So I have our last question. You'll be happy to know is, and this is quite specific, so I don't know we have the answer for this, but we can go back to this person. Is I completed a professional diploma in HR management in 2021 with UCD Professional Academy. What would be a good next step up?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. So I think I mentioned earlier that 5% of our students have gone and taken a further course with the Professional Academy, and we can find no discernible link in what people do. People are coming in, they're taking leadership management, then they're taking supply chain management, and I think our current record holder is like 6 courses under the belt. I'm very happy with that person. If you could all be more like that person, but genuinely, it's people are jumping around, and it is fascinating. And I think they're jumping around because of the fact that their own use case is very specific, right? Now, there is a point where you could say, look, I did a HR course in 2021 because I'm looking to get into HR. Maybe I fell into HR. Yeah. It probably might be appropriate for you to go on and do your CIPD or something like that, and kind of go that route because you're looking to really dive into that space. You can't do that with us, so I would send you away from my door. But or you might want to go do a master's in HR because you really want to dive into that area. So by taking the short course with us, you kind of you made an investment in time and money, and you kind of maybe you figured out, this is for me, actually. I really like this, and I want to continue with it, right? That's one benefit to coming to someone like us. It might be that you're sitting there and saying, okay, well, I did maybe I'm not even a HR manager. Maybe I just did the HR piece because I'm managing people and I'm seeing the niggledy bits, and I need to understand those. But actually, maybe your next challenge is in performance managing your team. You've got a course in that. If you want to take a short course in that, maybe you're a sales manager. So there's a question again about what you're looking to accomplish. For a lot of the people who come back to us, it's their first time back in education in a long while, maybe since they're maybe 10 years post qualification in terms of leaving school or university. And it's daunting, right? You're coming back, show up, have to study, lectures, there's an assignment. You got to get through all that, and we kind of get you through it. You're like, that wasn't that bad, was it? And people go on and use that as a jumping off point, either with us or with further, more in-depth study. Again, look at things like Springboard, this fantastic course. If you want to take even postgrad level courses that you can take. So there's a world of options, but it really depends on you. So did you take that HR course because you were thinking of diving in, at which point probably a clear path? Did you take it because you are just adding to your set of skills? Well, then what's the next challenge? Why'd you take that course? And what's the next challenge that you're facing? Would be the question even if you're chatting to one of the education consultants who deals with individuals who come in, that'll be the kind of conversation they'd want to have with you.
And that's a really good answer to say that it depends on yourself, doesn't it?
Thank you very much.
So super. So we'll leave it there, guys. The best way for people to get in contact, go onto the website. Aaron,
yes,
down that
the UCD Professional Academy website's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and there is a section there for business for corporates. And if you come on through, the team there will make sure to look after you. You can obviously look me up on LinkedIn, Aaron McKenna with 2 A's, and not the boxer. There's a boxer with exactly the same name as me. I'm not him. And
not today.
That's it, not today. And feel free to connect. Feel free to connect with the team, and we'd love to have a conversation. As I say, there's no pressure. You come along, even just to say we have L&D challenges. We'd like a perspective. Genuinely, we're part of a university that's been around for a little while now, and our job is not just to do the upskilling, but to genuinely help organisations to progress or to get a perspective on what they're looking to do, so that they can, as I say, kind of put on that green jersey and help us be a far more productive and engaged economy. So.
And I can give our own little plug. We had I think it was Sean Coyne maybe last year, and he was great for us, and specifically around what do we actually want to achieve, and that was the key question. And exactly like you said, it was because we had people going in drips and drabs, and then it was like, okay, we see you're sending people here, so let's figure out what your whole plan is. So you're very, very helpful. And I think you guys go on site with people as well, just to figure out
That's right.
how to build a plan as well. So thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. He's asked here about recording. So yes, we do record everything, and we will send everything out afterwards, probably this evening or tomorrow. Thank you so much for your time, Aaron. Really, really do appreciate it. I found it very useful. So thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.